Welcome to Purdue University College of Science Superheroes of Science podcast. I'm Stephen.
And I'm Sarah. We will be discussing anything and everything related to the science classroom and interviewing scientists.
Because as we know, scientists are the superheroes behind the science.
So join us as we learn about the scientists and explore current trends in K-12 science education.
Welcome to a special edition of Superheroes of Science. We are here in Berkeley, California at the Lawrence Hall of Science on our last and final day of the North American Regional Meeting for GLOBE. We are here with Ann Lewis, the Project Director at South Dakota Discovery Center. Ann is also a National Geographic Education Fellow and a GLOBE partner. Thank you for meeting with us, Ann.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Your title alone implies lots of hats.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Some days I wish I had more heads, but I only have one. So I try to make all the hats stack on each other so that I try to find the places, if I were to Venn diagram out everything that each one of those implies, to work mostly where the overlap is happening.
All right, we're going to ask you about some of the adventures you do for those hats and kind of what you do. But first, let's back up and talk more kind of your career path. How did you get to the point where you're a Nat Geo fellow, where you're a project director? So back us up in education, experience. How'd you get here?
It was a circuitous path. It was not direct. I actually had a pretty, traumatic is probably too strong a word, maybe more off-putting experience in high school. When we were doing a chemistry lab, and it was very simple. It was pH, and so you had 10 stations with litmus paper, and high school students then are as high school students now. You had your really conscientious ones who, like me, who followed the directions, which included using a clean strip of litmus paper at each station. And then you had the kids who really didn't care. They were just like dunking random bits of whatever. I don't even know that was always litmus paper. And so by the time I got to the last station, I put my little clean strip in, and I forget what the result was, but it came back opposite of what I knew it should be, because as we were working, you'd kind of compare answers just to see. And so I knew what had happened, that the sample had been contaminated. So I was kind of left with this dilemma. Do I put down what my data said, or do I put down what I knew the quote-unquote right answer to be? And I decided that doing that would be tantamount to copying. So I put down what my data said, and I figured that the teacher would notice that I got it wrong, and that would, he would let me explain, and we could figure it out. And I got it wrong, but he didn't let me explain. It was just offering. Oh. Yeah. And he was old school. I mean, he was the kind of teacher to get control of the class would slap a yardstick over the desk.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he was kind of old school. And so that turned me off of science for quite a while. I did not take any science courses after that. I did take a geology course in college, which I loved because there was a lot of field work. But I was a humanities major and with an education background. Well, fast forward, I ended up, mainly because my father-in-law worked for this science center, and they needed someone to write a newsletter. And because of my humanities background, I got the job. And that they couldn't afford to hire, advertise for the position. And so with that came another responsibility. And there wasn't a lot of science involved in these. I was just sort of science facilitator, communicator. But as I got deeper and deeper into the work, I got more and more interested in the science. And so I went back and got my master's in science education. So I felt like at some point I needed to really get the science. So it was, it was sort of what I call the scenic route to this position. I didn't start out loving science other than the outdoors and nature. That was always a high interest level for me. But I did not do the traditional science pathway.
Wow. So what are you doing? What's your role now for the Learning Center, Discovery Learning, Words, whatever it is.
But at my job, I oversee a watershed education and outreach project. I have some funding to do that. So most of my work is around watersheds, and you can fit anything into watersheds almost. So I do a lot of water quality work. We do a lot of climate kinds of things. So that forms mainly what I do. I work with teachers in professional development. I am a huge, huge believer in field-based professional development, in getting teachers outside so that they can have the experiences. I know it's not always easy to get students outside, and there are some real barriers to that. But even if the students can't go, the teacher absolutely must go and have a really in-depth, immersive experience in the field, if for nothing else, to bring back that experience to share with his or her students.
Now, did you not lead a globe learning expedition a few years ago?
Yeah, I leave them every year. Yeah.
Oh, you do it every year?
Yeah.
I just remember seeing pictures of it, and I thought, I want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're currently, our learning expeditions are currently based in Badlands National Park. So we'll spend one day in the classroom, and then we'll head out to the Badlands and we primitive camp. And there is a vault toilet for those who aren't quite ready for the cat hole, but and it has hand sanitizer, which is important to some people. But there are picnic tables, but there's no running water, there's no electricity. The bison literally walk through the campground. So we go out there and we camp for several days, and we're doing field studies, flow protocols. We're using iNaturalist to record flora and fauna. So it's a really comprehensive field experience.
See, that's amazing.
That is. This is so cool.
Yeah.
You would think I actually have trouble filling it some years. I try to make it cross-curricular. Science teachers, of course, geography teachers, math teachers. We certainly can use all the math help in analyzing data. English language arts, there's applications there. So I really think every teacher, no matter what they teach, needs to have an experience at least once like this.
Yes. Oh, I agree. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. I know I've been lucky enough to do, by working with Purdue University, I was able to do study abroad. Mm. And this is after I had degrees, but I was able to participate in them. And I got to say, they were life-changing. Being able to go out in the field. Not too long ago, I was out in the field with one of our faculty members. She took me as part of one of her grants to Alaska, and I got to help her with her field work that she was doing, and then I got to talk to schools there. And being able to do field work and be out there and see how actual data is done is it's an amazing experience to be able to do that. And so I can't believe that that's not like a waiting list for 3 years out for that.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm a teacher in the classroom and I'm an Indiana teacher in an Indiana classroom, where do I even begin to look for opportunities like this?
I don't know. The thing is, though, yes, it's great to have professional development like this, but you can go out and have your own experience. I just did this because I thought there was a need and I wanted to go out. Certainly, if you're a teacher with some experience, especially if you're a globe-trained teacher, you can arrange something similar. And maybe it's not overnight in a national park for 3 days in a primitive area. Maybe you go out to a state park for an afternoon and you do cloud protocols and you do the tree protocols or you use Globe Observer. That's where you can start. I think, and this speaks to some of my National Geographic experiences, I really believe in every person an explorer. That no matter who you are, you can embody and live the explorer lifestyle. You don't have to have a National Geographic grant, which is how they determine who their explorers are. It's really a matter of attitude, and the attitudes of a National Geographic explorer are curiosity, a sense of responsibility and a feeling of empowerment that your actions matter.
See, and that's because Sarah and I went through Nat Geo certification last year. We're both certified.
High five, high
And
five.
we see your name on the forums and stuff like that. Even the follow-up emails and things that we get, right? I see your name and where you're mentoring other educators in this. And I think the empowerment to me is the most important aspect of that. We do the globe, we do the protocols, we want to do the science, but then it's like we have students with some amazing projects that it'd be so awesome to see more of them follow up on that and be able to do things with that, share that with the right people to get that information out there. And I think that oftentimes they don't understand that they can be empowered to do those things.
Absolutely. Young people are, when I was young, I did not feel particularly powerful, but young people do have a lot of not political power, but social power. And when they step up and step forward, there are adults who will listen. And you're seeing that like around Greta Thunberg and all the energy that she's ignited, that this is the voice of the next generation saying, this is what we want. And we can't, as adults, we can't.
Sorry, my laptop dinged. I don't know what it is. I left something open apparently. So the Nat Geo Explorer, what all is involved there?
Being a National Geographic Explorer, or being a National Geographic Education Fellow, or being a National Geographic Certified Educator. There's lots of different programs we've mentioned.
Well, let's start with, how do they first get involved with National Geographic? I mean, everyone's heard of National Geographic, and they're like, oh, that's so cool. But then, so how can a regular educator, just Nancy, whoever coming off the street, how can she be random names? I'm trying. Yeah. I'm like, you're doing well. Trying to think of random names here.
Well, if you go to natgeoed.org, and you look at, there's a drop-down menu, professional development, and that will show you all the different options that National Geographic is offering around professional development, including the certified educator. And being a National Geographic certified educator is really about showing an affinity and an affiliation with National Geographic. They have a learning framework which lays out their concept of what an explorer is and what that looks like in the classroom. They also have the scales and perspectives of how you teach like an explorer in your classroom. So once and this is sort of what I've seen with teachers, is that once you start down that path of really embracing this mindset, if you stick with it, if you keep nurturing it, if you keep feeding it, it starts growing. I have a colleague in South Dakota, and she became a certified educator. And her project, her capstone project, which you have to do to become a certified educator, was very simple. It was adding maps to the reading of the Odyssey. She teaches 9th grade English.
Oh, I like it.
Megan Brummel, yes. And she said it changed the way the students were interacting with the text. They understood it better. The themes made more sense to them. Because there was that visual component. Megan has since gone on and really thought about how to make her curriculum more impactful for the students. So now she's the senior project advisor, and she's having the students do community service projects for their senior project. And that walks back to the National Geographic and that empowerment and things like that. Another colleague of mine, she's a kindergarten teacher. She did her project on this birding unit. She's a phenomenal birder. And it was a great project. It was, it had kindergartners, so of course it was adorable, but the children were learning authentic content. So last year, the year before, she worked with her kindergartners, and the high school students worked on building a community bird feeder, an action project, so that more of the community could understand and appreciate birds. So there's really this idea that I like to say being a certified educator is once you get that certification, it's not the end, it's the beginning.
Yes.
It should be the beginning of a new depth to your teaching. So that's one thing you can get involved. Then there is the Grosvenor Teacher Fellowship. And 2017, National Geographic sent me, courtesy of Lindblad Expeditions to the Arctic, to experience that and bring that back to my teaching in my community. And I actually used GLOW protocols. I brought a mess of equipment with me. And then I found out that on shore, we had to stay in these tight little groups because we're in polar bear country. So all my great, I was going to set up transects. I just had like this great vision of what my expedition was going to be. And it didn't turn out quite that way. However, I did bring an infrared thermometer. So I took tons of surface temperature readings, including over the side of the ship as we were sailing through ice. So as we were going through ice, I'd lean over and I would take my reading. And as we were going through open, dark water, I would lean over and take my reading. And sure enough, it shows exactly what the satellite data has been telling us, is that sea ice is colder than open water. Not by a huge amount. I mean, we're still in the Arctic. Mm-hmm. But that really goes into teaching about energy budgets and, what happens to why our planet is warming and feedback loops and the albedo and all of that. And I have this, really compelling personal story about leaning over the sides of ships and taking infrared thermometers. So that's another avenue to be connected with National Geographic. And then as an education fellow, that was sort of a surprise. That's sort of like something National Geographic will reach out to you. They're working on a specific initiative and they're looking for someone to take on a longer term project that they want to develop. But you're also given a platform to talk about things that matter to you and develop your own project. So I worked with them on working around iNaturalist, and I've created a short series of videos on iNaturalist for teachers. And I'm curating them into a YouTube playlist. Oh. And I've created a bit.ly and it's just iNat4, number 4, educators playlist. It's the bit.ly/.
Okay. And we'll make sure we put the link too in the show notes.
Yeah.
So it'd be easy for people clicking it too.
Yeah. So I'm adding to them all the time. So I have, just how to navigate the interface with iNaturalist. You don't even have to log in. If you want to teach the environments in your state, I have a video on there. Currently, I got asked by a teacher, so how can you say no, to help with setting up projects for a BioBlitz. If you're doing a BioBlitz, how do you set it up so you're pulling in the data to your project that you want pulled in? Because on iNaturalist, just parenthetically, you can set up projects, and you just go to that project page and it will show you all the data you want. You can set it up and tell iNaturalist, I want this data taken these times, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I didn't know you could do that much with that app.
I didn't either.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. I'm planning on doing how to use iNaturalist to show migrations. Journey North has some great visualizations of data around monarch migration and American robin migration. But you can show if a species migrates, you'll probably see it in the EyeNet data. For example, painted lady butterflies. Mm-hmm. You can see that from January through the summer, how they move out from California and Texas and then back. Even something as common as Canada geese, you'll see those observations kind of move up and into Canada and then back. And for those who don't know, not everybody might know what iNaturalist is. So it's a citizen science platform for anybody to go out and make observations of flora and fauna. And it's pretty generous what they mean by flora and fauna. Everything from large mammals to protozoa. I mean,
Wow.
Oh, that's
Okay.
great for you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a wife's great.
yeah. So, and you don't have to be an expert in identifying it. iNaturalist has some pretty intensive AI that it will suggest an identification. But there's also a really great community that will help with the identifications. And then if you're thinking you're not quite ready for that, there's another app called Seek. And it uses the iNaturalist data to help you identify plants usually, or sometimes insects or mammals or, what have you. And it's super slick. You just turn it on and you start taking a picture of a plant, and you'll start seeing the AI work, and it'll say plants, and then it'll say if it's a monocot or a dicot, and it'll go down the taxonomic scale. Yeah, until hopefully you get down to species. Sometimes it gets stuck at genus, or sometimes it barely makes it to kingdom. It's like it's a plant. That's all I got. Sorry. But
It's probably as much as I could get.
Yeah,
It's good, not better than me.
that one's a good one to use with younger children because there's no data collected or recorded, so you don't have all the concerns about privacy. And I really recommend that one for parents and grandparents and really anybody. I have it on my phone, and I look a lot smarter than I used to because I can whip it out. And if you want to impress your friends, you don't let them know, but you just kind of take a picture on the slide.
Well, that'd be useful for the globe trees.
Yes, it would.
Oh yeah, that would be
Because
absolutely.
we don't know the trees, and we're like
We struggle. We come out and do that. We set up in fact, we're working on a program for this coming spring and the carbon cycle and identifying some of these, and the two of us out trying to identify these trees.
sad
Oh,
thing.
It's not a maple.
You might have just saved us a lot of work in begging someone to come help us.
An embarrassment.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
You better get out there quick before the leaves are gone, because I think the leaves are an important
But
identifier.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Well, Anne, I think something that really that I'm always impressed whenever I speak with you is you have such an amazing way of seeking out resources. I just feel like you do such a great job of. You're active with Globe, but even here at Lawrence Hall of Science, I think you were making some connections here, and then with National Geographic, and then about iNatural. I just feel like you're always at the cutting edge of where the new tools are for teachers. So for someone that doesn't necessarily always know the best cutting edge, what advice do you have for just staying up on things? Like what are some good resources or places to go?
Well, I actually, I first of all, I should just kind of frame that compliment with, I just love to learn. And I think like all teachers, we just love to learn. And I'm endlessly curious, which is the first hallmark of an explorer. Curiosity is what drives explorers. So I have my go-tos like National Geographic, Globe, NASA, Lawrence Hall of Science, Beetles, BEETLES project. So those are the ones that I subscribe to and I look at, and it just seems like they come to me. Mm-hmm. I wish I had a better process.
I don't think they do. I think you're always looking for them.
And
you're always questioning things like you said, and you're curious. And so I don't think they've come to you. I think you are so good at finding things and understanding how they fit in, you don't realize it.
You make it look easy.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Well, I do spend a lot of time looking at things that aren't that good or trying things that don't work. Definitely there's some growth mindset involved with this.
It's a way of looking at things, and you have that lens. Mm-hmm. You do a much better job than we do about seeing how things will fit together.
Oh no, because you're looking at the outside. You don't see my inside. I mean, you guys look at your inside and you're like, oh, I'm such a mess. But to the outside world, you're like, look at Steven and Sarah. They are kicking it in their globe. I'm like, wow, look at all you guys do. So. Never compare your insides with somebody else's outside.
Well, that is great advice.
That's good advice. Last question.
Yes. Okay. we are, like we said, the last day, this North American Regional meeting. Soon, all of us will be hopefully traveling home, hopefully sooner than later. But let's say that you get home and you magically find that you have nothing on the books for the following week. So you have a completely open, you can do anything you want to do. What would Anne do to relax and unwind and have some fun?
Your expression right there, I'm like, you're like, a free week.
Wait, what?
What is she talking about?
The words are English, but I don't understand them. Oh, no, there's no question. I would go to the Badlands and camp, and I just spend a lot of time just wandering around and looking at things. And so that would definitely be 2 or 3 days of whatever I would do. Then I would read. I'm currently into this idea of understanding a teacher's identity as a underpinning of how they teach. So Parker Palmer, and then there's a work by Brad Olson that I'm reading. Parker Palmer, by the way, The Courage to Teach. I don't know.
I've read that.
Yes.
I thought, that name sounds familiar. That's
Yeah.
exactly it, The Courage to Teach.
Yes. So I would catch up on some of my reading. I do a lot. I'm a struggling photographer. I keep forgetting what f-stops are. So I know you laugh because you're a good photographer.
Well, I used to teach that.
Yeah. So I would take my camera and I would practice some of my photography. I am as of August, getting into watercolor pencils. So So what I do with my photography now is I go through my pictures and I'll try to find something I want to attempt to draw. So it's some combination of all of those. Depending on the weather and whatever else, that's what I would do.
Nice.
Anne, thank you so much for your
We
time and
appreciate
meeting
it.
with us.
This was a blast. Thank you so much.
It's supposed to be fun.
Thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you love Superheroes of Science, be sure to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or your preferred podcast player. Be sure to join us as we add interviews of scientists and incorporate discussions of current trends in K-12 science.
Until next time, be super, and remember, you are someone's hero. Boiler up.
Hammer down.